if you were driving on a road with no clear exit at all, no traffic, no familiar signs, no nearby city, and suddenly a sign appeared that no one had ever seen before. A sign that doesn't exist on maps and GPS. Would you stop? Or would you just pass by? I stopped. And that stop pulled me to a point where there was no way back and no exit. My name is Martin Keane. It was 1:23 a.m. And I, like always, was behind the wheel, alone, tired, and with a mind full of endless thoughts. Driving on long night roads felt like meditation to me, a kind of solitude that melts you into yourself, not something you fear, but that night was different. I had been going for hours. In the hours before, there was only the faded white lines of the road, distant lights in the rearview mirror, and the sound of a radio that only gave static. My body was heavy. My neck was stiff. My eyes were locked on one fixed point, as if every time I blinked, my energy slipped away little by little. I saw a tiny blinking light from far away. At first I thought it was the light of a car, but when it got closer I realized no, it was a sign. A worn-out sign, with faded color that even years ago had rust marks etched into it. But its writing was completely readable. Last exit, service and rest, 0.5 miles. My heart dropped, like I had seen a rescue door in the middle of the darkness. I took a turn to the right and entered a narrow road that didn't even run through the map. The center line was almost erased, and my headlights only lit a few meters ahead, as if the rest of the road had been swallowed by darkness. The trees on both sides stood like heavy pillars of an endless tunnel, their branches slowly bending left and right, and their shadows dancing slowly across the body of my car. When I glanced at the mirror, I saw that there was no light behind me, not even the highway's lights. Right then, a strange feeling rose from the depths of my unconscious. You are not alone. But there was no human, no sound of breathing, and no footprints. After going down about half a mile, the fog became thicker than usual, like a thick curtain that covered everything within a few centimeters. When I looked outside through the window, the only thing visible in that dark, foggy night was a little light from my headlights, searching the path like two emotionless eyes. The engine sound, which had been steady until a few minutes ago, suddenly began to shake irregularly, like when a large instrument with the wrong tuning starts a pounding rhythm. Naturally, that vibration occupied my mind. I tried to focus, but the radio sound turned into a strange murmur, not recognizable, not meaningful, just noise and crackling. And then, inside that unnatural fog, a weak orange light began to appear. A light that did not come from any specific lamp, not from a home, not from a car. It was simply shining from the middle of the darkness. The closer I got, the clearer the light became, and the smell of hot asphalt and a little bitter coffee slowly entered my nostrils. Finally, a building appeared, an old gas station, with cracked walls, lights blinking like a pulse, and a small shop next to the pumps. Above the shop door there was a cracked neon light with letters falling apart. Service, food, coffee. Everything looked like places you had seen in horror movies. Not completely abandoned, but severely forgotten by time. I parked the patrol next to the pump and got out. The air was heavy. No wind, no cricket sound, no natural sound of life. Only absolute silence. I pushed the shop door, and it opened. No unusual sound echoed. No special bell. Just silence. Like the shop had been closed from the very beginning. When I went inside, I saw no seller. No customer. There was nothing except dusty shelves and a small refrigerator whose inner light glowed softly. On the cash counter there was a metal box open and on that same counter a note written in handwriting but strangely clear. Pay what it's worth, or leave something else. There was also a label next to it, Service since 1967. The words were old, but as if they were written yesterday. I told myself, maybe the owner of this place hasn't even noticed their prices are outdated. I searched my pocket, pulled out a few bills, took a soda and a half-eaten sandwich from the shelf, and put the money into the box. At the same time I was doing that, I heard a faint murmur behind me. I turned. There was nothing, but on the shop floor, a child's shoe was lying there, quietly, as if someone had been standing there a few moments ago, even though I was sure I had seen no car on the road, let alone a human presence. My hand shook. I stepped back a few steps, and it was as if in that moment I felt the silence of the place. It was no longer silence. It was like a living thing, a creature that heard everything, and sometimes only watched. I turned once more toward the exit, but in front of the shop there were no fresh footprints, no tire tracks, no shoe prints, only a flat ground, and fog that was getting thicker every moment. I picked up the shop's memory log from the counter and a leather notebook with no date. When I opened it, the first page said, Customers who came after sunset never left before sunrise. The second line was written in tiny ink, not with neat handwriting, but with a strange trembling script. Do not stay past the last exit. My mind was falling apart. I thought I was mistaken, but my eyes were recording reality. I closed the notebook and unconsciously turned toward the exit, until a soft sound, like a murmur coming from the corner of the wall, began. Not like something dreamy, but clear, yet hard to hear. It was not its own voice. It was as if someone was speaking from behind the shelves, but the words were not recognizable. The structure of my mind began to collapse. Is this place real? Is this where people go? Am I really not alone? I stepped towards the door. And at that moment, the fog behind the windows grew darker, like a wave that wanted to come inside. If you have been with me on this road so far, please like the video so I know you are still following this mysterious path to the end, because I'm sure once you enter it, the way back, just like the path itself, is nowhere. After all that heavy silence and the strange signs inside the shop, when I pushed through the exit door, I felt an invisible force pushing me from behind. The fog, like a living creature, had gathered slowly on the ground, so thick that even the car's headlight couldn't light the layer beneath it. In absolute silence, a trembling sound, very close, like the rattling of old metal, came from behind me. I turned. There was nothing, only small, low hills of fog, spreading slowly in the zero wind of the night. When I took a step, I thought maybe it was just fatigue, but when I lifted my foot again, the same sound repeated. A slow vibration, like a metal lever moving. I took a few steps toward the car, but the ignition didn't even make a sound. The lights stayed off the same way. I slowly turned back toward the shop. I pulled the leather notebook out of my pocket and went to the cash counter. Something there caught my attention. A line I hadn't seen before. Under the previous text, in tiny, unclear writing. "Don't let it watch you." I froze for a moment. What did it even mean? I looked around. The fog wasn't warm, but it felt like a cold breath was rising from deep in the ground. Not from the sky. My breathing became heavy. I rushed out of the shop. The fog was lower, like a blanket that intended to stay on the ground. But it wasn't flat. What? It felt like it was rising. I walked toward the narrow road. With every step I got closer, I felt like the ground was being pulled into a liquid state. The sound of my footsteps on the gravel was like a slow echoing in a long tunnel. Suddenly I heard whispering, not clear, just like a murmur from deep inside the fog. "He never leaves." I turned. There was nothing, but I felt like someone was watching me. I felt sick. It was as if two things were happening inside me at the same time. First, real fear of the unknown environment. And second, a strange force that said, "You must make your first choice." My head spun. Why a choice? A choice for what? I hadn't even gone far enough to understand where I was. As I wrestled with myself, the fog around the imaginary town closed like a ring around my stopping point. And that was when I heard slow footsteps, spreading from the right side of the road. Not fast. It's not close. Slow. Steady. At first I told myself, it's just an illusion. Just a tired mind. But the footsteps didn't stop. Louder. Closer. I slowly turned my head. A shadow. At first it was only a stretched shadow, that with every step seemed to pull itself out from behind the fog. When it reached in front of me, it was no longer a shadow. It was a completely human shape. Its feet weren't on the ground. They were limping and dragging. I was frozen, not from cold, but from the absolute stillness of my mind. It made no sound. It didn't breathe. It didn't speak. It just stared at me, and it looked into my eyes, as if it wanted to read my soul, not my body. For a moment, suddenly everything went quiet. No wind, no footsteps, no fog, only a heavy silence, like the endless tunnel of a grave, wrapping around you. I could feel my breathing, but it was like no sound came out of it. I locked my eyes on that creature itself, as if with its gaze it wanted to invite me to something whose name I couldn't even say. Suddenly a mental image of my past appeared before my eyes. My wife smiling, my old friends waving by the roadside, and my mother's voice saying, "You can always come back." But none of it was from the reality of now. Everything was like a damaged piece of film. That shadow took a step, slowly, but aware, and as if it wanted to make me understand that I had to choose, to stay or to go. But go where? Was there even another exit? Or was this place itself that exit, but an exit to nowhere? My hands were trembling, but one sentence kept repeating in my mind. If you want to stay alive, you must accept your past. The shadow came closer, as if it was telling me to choose. In that deathly silence, a sound was heard from far away. Decide. Not like an order, but like a warning that either kills me or frees me. Slowly I opened my lips. I don't want to stay here. I don't want to be forgotten. but I need to know what the truth is. The shadow didn't move at all. It just stared, little by little. Its face began to become clear. Its face, somehow familiar. So not what I expected, as if years ago I had tripped it. I tried to step back a few steps, but my foot got caught in the fog on the road. No, this fog wasn't trapping me. It was holding me. If you were in my place, in the middle of a foggy road, facing a creature that seems to know your past, and it asks you to choose, what would your choice be? Leave me a comment. Should I have stayed and accepted the truth? Or should I have run toward an exit that I don't even know is real or not? That moment of choice is what changes everything. When the shadow came closer and its face became clear enough for me to see it, my heart felt like it was drumming inside my chest. The face of that creature was not fully human and not completely a ghost. It was like a mixture of shattered memories from my life that never had permission to fully form. Every line on its face was like a bitter event from my past. Short, fast. Without a smile, and its eyes were like two endless dark holes. The sound of the foggy silence suddenly collapsed like an invisible wave and grabbed me from behind. The shadow took a step with no sound and spoke, not with its own voice, but with the reflection of a voice that echoed inside my head. You have always been here. You just haven't dared to look at it until now. I calmed down, but my body was still trembling, as if every time a word was spoken, a piece of my soul was being swallowed too. You cannot choose this path unless you see the truth. Eye contact with that creature caused a sudden image of the past to imprint on my mind. I remembered a night when I decided to step away from life. When, on Highway 95, I crashed. No, not the crash I always remembered. Another crash. A crash no one ever mentioned. Not in police files. Not in family memories. But I had always felt that moment behind the curtain of my mind. I remembered I was driving at a speed I never should have. A speed as if I was running from something. From pain. From memories. From myself. And suddenly I opened my eyes. I was facing that creature again. The air around me felt denser. Not just fog. The fog was like a heavy creature weighing on my shoulders. The shadow said, "You came here because you don't want to accept the truth. But the truth only becomes real when you face it." I stepped back, but my right foot disappeared into the fog. Not like getting stuck in a swamp, but as if the fog was swallowing my existence. I tried to scream, but my voice wouldn't come out of my throat. As if there was no air in my lungs, but in a dark tunnel, only an illusory echo of sound. The shadow came closer, slowly, not with steps, but like the movement of the mind, and it said, "Now choose," and it pointed toward the highway that was always behind me. But now ahead it vanished into the fog. These options were in front of me. To stay with that creature, with that fog, and let the truth shape me. Or to go toward the highway, a place where maybe the reality of my past is waiting, or maybe only another repetition of illusion. I closed my eyes, one deep breath, and I remembered that day, the days I left home, the days I stayed away from my family, and the days I chose to fight memories. Instead of facing them, I opened my eyes. I turned toward the highway. The The fog slowly moved aside, and that creature was no longer there. With every step I got closer, I still heard that same murmur in my ear. "You chose. Now wake up." When I reached the sign that was now shiny and bright, its writing had changed. "Next exit, reality ahead." For the first time in hours, I felt my mind was lighting up. I opened my eyes. The white light of the hospital ceiling was shining into my eyes. The sound of the heart machine, the deep, kind breath of a nurse, and the smell of coffee from the hallway. I was alive. My wife was sitting beside me, her eyes full of tears and an indescribable calm. I gently took her hand and said, "I'm back." From a road that was nowhere. She only smiled, as if she knew what journey I had experienced. "I don't want to run anymore. I don't want to hide the truth anymore. And most of all, I will never drive on remote, unmarked roads at night again. Because even when you think you are running from the past, you might be turning only toward it."